Ian, do you feel like you're ready to have a drink? Do you bash in a bourbon of some sort? Anything? Does that put you in?
It might be a little early but by time I'm in Austin also. So
Are you the day of, or are you going to get here a day early?
I get in a day early.
Smart man. All right. What's your agenda on Austin?
Probably somewhere around Austin a few times before, so I got a pretty good feel in town. Probably go down somewhere eat. Obvious place for a lot of people when they come into town. So
Absolutely. You are get some Elon Musk comment out there as well. Have you? So don't I would tell you, don't get distracted by the chats on the side there. So as it could be funny. So that happened to
I'll just focus on what you're doing. So what you're asking.
yeah.
Is that what I should do?
Yeah. I'm just telling you, those guys can get funny, throw you off. But those guys are usually pretty good. Ian, you gotta tell me. Something about why. Let's start with the thing kind of caught most people here in the state of Texas, which was the win Texas Tech. I want to know from your expertise. I'm obviously you were at the game, you were able to see what happened. What did Wyoming do so well? Because I think Tech was a team that a lot of people, expected to compete for a Big 12 championship. A lot of high hopes from them. It was a good game. I watched it, but you tell me your thoughts. You have boots on the ground. Give me your interpretation of that game.
Well, I think first of all, Wyoming returned a lot of experience on defense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe a lot of people are not familiar with the Mountain West Conference or familiar with Wyoming football, may not realize that they had a very experienced defense returning, and they had a very good, a good group of defensive players returning, and they have a very deep. I think they have a great rotation. The defensive linemen go about 8 to 10 deep, so they could play a lot of different defensive linemen during the game. They have all conference guys across the defense. So the potential of this defense this year, for Mountain West standards, seems to be something that people are very optimistic in the Wyoming football program. And I think they did a good job with Texas Tech, keeping them down. They held them to 20 points after 4 quarters of football. So then we went into overtime, and Texas Tech got some. But Wyoming has the ability to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback and stop the run with those defensive linemen, Cole Goodbow and Jordan Bertinelli and Devon Harris and Sebastian Harsh, and they have the top middle linebacker in the conference. Actually, the preseason defensive player of the year in Easton Gibbs. So there's some talent on that defense, and I think they were able. And with Coach Bowl coaching for a long time, he's been at Wyoming for 10 years. He was a longtime assistant at Nebraska. He went to North Dakota State and won 3 FCS championships in a row and build a power there. So a smart coach with a great coaching staff. And Oscar Giles used to play football at Texas. He was an assistant at Texas. He's a defensive line coach. They just got good assistants, and I think they were well prepared for that game. And playing in Laramie is not an easy thing. It's at 7,200 feet. The crowd was really into the game. The students were great. It was a raucous atmosphere. It's not going to be 100,000 like we're going to see in Austin this weekend, but it was still a very vibrant crowd. So I think Texas Tech just came into kind of that perfect storm a couple Saturdays ago.
And then obviously last week they get that win against Portland State. And the thing that seems to stand out from that one is that the sacks. It seems like this team really has the ability to get to the quarterback, and they've done that over the last 2 games. Talk to me a little bit about Portland State, but more importantly, this team's ability to get to the quarterback. Who are the guys that are kind of been some of the most effective pass rushers so far?
Well, I think the one guy that a lot of people don't know about, because he was last fall camp going to last season before Wyoming played Illinois, Sebastian Harsh was considered the best, maybe one of the best defensive players on that team. And he went through the whole year of rehabbing his knee. He is really a pretty athletic defensive end that has the ability to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So he's an emerging player. I think he has a potential to be a superstar type of player at Wyoming or in the Mountain West Conference. And then you're dealing with Devon Harris coming back. He was an all Mountain West player last year. He's a great pass rusher. He's like a 6-year senior, so he has a lot of experience. And then just the interior of that defensive line is also pretty good pass rushers. You don't think a defensive tackle is getting a lot of sacks sometimes, but with Goodbow and Bertinoli, those are two. And Braden Sliders is another one. So they have some depth. The defensive end, Braden Sliders, can put some pressure on the quarterback. So that is definitely a strength. I think regarding Portland State, Wyoming took their off the gas a little bit in that game. I think their foot off the gas, so to speak, and got to a comfortable lead, had a chance to go up 38-10, turn the ball over. Portland State came back, scored a touchdown, eventually made it a 14-point game. So it wasn't a great effort, but it was a good enough effort to get through against the FCS opponent. So.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. Obviously, Andrew Peasley, the quarterback, obviously at Wyoming. Texas is really good up front on a defensive line. I don't know if you had a chance to watch the Bama game or not, but they do have a way to get to the passer. Who are the guys tasked to stop that defensive line, and how does that match up in your opinion?
Well, if you're talking about the Texas defensive line, I think that's an interesting matchup because Wyoming seems to be pretty solid on the offensive line this year. They're led by Frank Crum, a 6-year senior. He's actually a Laramie native. He's a Wyoming native. His dad played football for Wyoming in the 70s. His dad was an NFL guy, by the way, and he's a local guy. So they think he's a pro prospect. That's going to be an interesting matchup for him against that athletic defensive group of Texas. And then I think basically the offensive line is solid. How well they can match up against Texas down in the heat in Austin against those athletes. They're going to have to protect Andrew Peasley in this game. Wyoming's going to have to be able to develop the run game. I think they need to shorten the football game. I don't think they need to get into a scoring type of thing. Wyoming is a run first mentality football program, playing defense. Don't make a lot of mistakes. I think they need to shorten this game and try to keep it at a slow pace, kind of like when on the basketball court and people slow that pace down, if you know what I mean. Try to work the clock. And I think that's what Wyoming is going to have to do in this game, because we don't want to get in this possession game where there's constant possessions going and 3 and outs and things like that. So,
what has the coach said? What has Coach Bowles said about the matchup? Obviously you've talked to him this week. What has he said about Texas, and kind of your thoughts on what you saw when you watched Texas versus Bama this past weekend?
Well, what I see, first of all, Coach Bowles says this is the best Texas team he's ever seen. Okay, mm-hmm. So he's been around the block. He's played against Nebraska or against Texas when he was at Nebraska under Tom Osborne. He's been playing and coaching since the 80s, so he's seen a lot of Texas football teams. He, of course, played in the Big 12 or against Texas, Big 8 back in the day against Texas. So he's very high on Texas, and he knows this is going to be a big challenge for Wyoming. And what I see with Texas, I see a team that win the national championship this year, what I saw against Alabama. And it's going to be a game for Wyoming where they're really going to have to come up with a good strategy, try to, as I mentioned, shorten the game, try to keep a conservative game, and try to stay in it and win it in the fourth quarter. Because what I see with Texas is I see a lot of speed. I see there's years, every year you go and play Texas, and Wyoming's played Texas. I think this is the 4th time or last decade or so. There's always talent in Texas. There's always talent in Austin and for those Longhorns. But sometimes they don't always play up to that level of their talent. And I think what Coach Bowl was saying is now what we're seeing with Texas is they are playing to their level of the recruiting. And he looks at this as being a big challenge in the game, and has a lot of respect for Texas. So.
Texas boy asked, I guess, a question here, and I think it's related to the team. He goes, will they be able to handle the fans? They will be a part of this. It's a true SEC environment. In other words, they'll be traveling on the road, night games, there'll be 100,000 people in the stands. There'll be lights. It'll be crazy. How do you think that Wyoming team, you think have they experienced anything that would be similar to that? And is there a way for them to simulate that?
Well, I think the history of the program has experienced it because we've played in SEC country. We've through the years we've played those type of games, and at times we've played fairly well. Actually, went down and won in Tennessee about 15 years ago in front of 100,000 fans, but
Mm.
that's when their coach was out the door and they were kind of on a decline at that point. But yeah, that's a concern for Coach Bowl because in the Mountain West Conference, what you're going to get, and they go on the road and they played at Illinois last year, but they only had 36,000 fans at Illinois. They went to BYU last year, played a
Mhm.
pretty competitive game at BYU, and I think what BYU about 60,000, something like that. So
Mhm.
playing in front of a crowd of 100,000, that's something that the staff's definitely working on. They're gonna, I guess, during practice sessions, we have an indoor practice facility and stuff. They're gonna do some kind of noise through the speakers, try to simulate what they're going to get in Austin. Fortunately, I saw that it was going to be 86 degrees or something. I don't know what it's going to be
Mhm.
at kickoff. Uh, Last time we went down there about 10 years ago, I think it was about 100 degrees. So there's
That was last week, by the way.
yeah, I saw. I've been watching the weather report, so I saw
Yeah.
the heat going down a little bit, which I think it's still going to be humid and hot, and at least it's an evening kickoff. But those are things Wyoming's going to have to deal with, kind of like with Texas Tech coming up to Laramie, having to deal with the 7,200 feet, and there's things that you have to deal with. But that's going to be. But I think also the players get really excited. A lot of these players get excited to be able to play in that environment in Austin and Texas. And I think that can also be a big motivator for a lot of players. But the concern is maybe some of the guys get intimidated, especially in that first quarter with the crowd, and that's when those games could get out of hand pretty quick. So.
Yeah. One of the things I want to ask you before you go is that you saw Isaiah Neyor when he was there in Wyoming. Uh, what kind of player was he? When he was there, there's a lot of receivers here. He got injured last season, so we haven't really had a chance to really see Isaiah Neyor in a game. Kind of your thoughts on on him and what were kind of the thoughts about Isaiah when he left the program?
Well, Isaiah was our main weapon for a couple years ago. Wyoming's passing attack has kind of been the thing that always has held this bowl program back because they play good defense, good special teams. They run the ball well, but the passing game when Isaiah played at Wyoming was very ineffective. The quarterbacks didn't do a good job delivering the ball, reading the defense. It just a lot of struggling. But I tell you what, he was the one guy 3 or 4 times a game would make a huge play for that Wyoming offense and made some big catches. And he had good speed. He could really, one thing I noticed, he could really go up and get the football and had good hands and traffic, and especially on that deep pass to be able to grab that ball. And he made some great catches, and he's definitely a guy I can see playing at Texas. I was going to ask you guys about it. I did see that he had a 1 for 14 so
Mm-hmm.
far this year. Is he down on the depth chart a little bit there, or where's he?
Yeah, it just they got to transfer in from Georgia, at Adonai Mitchell, and because of that, that's kind of puts him down a little bit on that depth chart, and then he was not really 100% for a lot of the offseason, and so there is that. So this is that they've just got a lot. They just have a very very deep room, and he's just kind of amongst the guys at this moment.
Yeah, he when he left Wyoming, very disappointing. I think the fans were very disappointed because we could see him being our next uh, superstar type wide receiver at Wyoming and being a really maybe the best wide receiver in the Mountain West or one of the top wide receivers in the conference. So
Mhm.
it was people, and that was kind of when that transfer portal thing started picking up, right? I think it was
Yeah,
that
yeah.
point, and at that point, it was first time in the history that you saw so many players at one time just leave a program, and I think there's a lot of disappointment with him leaving and stuff. And but I think generally Wyoming fans do want to support players that played at the school in the past, and I think generally speak, you got some bad apples out there, probably say differently, but
Yeah.
they want him to do well. They want all these players to do well. When they move on to the NFL, let's say move on to the National Football League, they want them to do really well, like Josh Allen and some of those guys coming from Wyoming playing the NFL. So we'd love to have him right now. That's all I got to say. So,
all right, last thing, and I'll let you run, Ian, is just give me your thoughts and maybe predictions, even if you don't give me a score prediction because you need some time on that, but just kind of your thoughts, from the Wyoming perspective, about this game. What and another thing is, if it's not a win, if it's not an upset, are there other wins to be had for the program?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because Wyoming's off to a good start. They beat Texas Tech at home, and then they got their win over Portland State. They're 2-0. And really, the goal I think going forward for Wyoming after this Texas game is to win a Mountain West Conference championship and maybe be one of the high-ranked G5 teams that gets in that quote-unquote bowl game. So the goals are out there. This is an experienced football team that Coach Bowl feels is a Mountain West Conference championship contender. And really what I think we would love to go in and knock Texas off. That would be a major upset. That would be the top news in the country. There's no doubt about it, I think. Realistically, is it going to happen? You never know. Things in this game do happen that's kind of bizarre sometimes. I think there's a chance it could happen, but I think what Wyoming really wants to get is they're getting there, play a competitive, game. Like I had mentioned before, Coach Bowl wants to. I think he's going to want to slow the tempo down, shorten that game quite a bit, and try to get that running game churned up a little bit so the clock's rolling. And we don't. If Wyoming can play within a couple scores and not have any and this goes for Texas too. You don't want to have any major injuries or injuries that are going to affect you when you get on the conference play. I think people can take a deep breath and say, let's move on to Appalachian State and the rest of the Mountain West Conference schedule. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Ian. Hey, tell everybody who's interested or maybe they got family out there in Wyoming or they want to check out your stuff this week. Tell them about how to find you on Twitter, how to find the website, just any information that you can give.
Thanks, Anwar. I appreciate you having me on. I'll definitely promote Orange Blood and your show, I should say.
Appreciate it.
And I'll definitely retweet it or whatever if you send it my direction. So I do appreciate you having me on, and have a great day.
Okay, well, thank you. That's what was all right. We'll just let you go on that note. Thank you, Ian McMackin. I appreciate it. Ian, I asked you to promote your stuff on socials. So, but that's all right. That's all right. We'll find him. I'll get you his information that's out there. So listen, how you can find Ian, if you're looking to find any of this stuff that he's got out there, it's go_com. So you can find him on Twitter. It's WYOGO_com. Ian McMackin, it's McMackin. If you're interested about anything Wyoming related, I'll do the promo for him. You want to do anything Wyoming related, you can also get him on goyogo.com, part of the Rivals Network. So thank you so much, Ian.